You know, my dear friend, this is a short message I want to share with you, and as you can see from my expression, it is not a very, very happy message. Let me put it that way. A couple of days ago, I had a call from one of my elders who is a taxi driver. He said, Pastor, I need your prayers. I asked him, Elder, what is the problem? And he said, Pastor, unfortunately, I gave my car to somebody and the person has knocked down, someone, and unfortunately, the person is dead. I said, oh my goodness, this is quite unfortunate. So we had prayers and everything went through with the family. And then when everything was said and done, just recently I had a call from one of the elders again telling me that the funeral for the said person who was knocked down by the car is coming up. And so I decided to find more about the person who was knocked down. And what I heard really, really made me sad. The whole story is this young man who was knocked down by the car was a student at the university. In fact, a level 300 student. What makes the story even sad is the fact that this young man comes from a poor background. And so right from the senior high school, he has actually been working to take care of himself. He took care of himself from the senior high school. After school, he had to work to save money to come to the university. And he's such a brilliant student. And at the university, from first year to the third year before he died, he was sponsoring himself. He was teaching, having part-time teaching, doing every kind of work to stay in the school. But he's dead. He's dead. I asked him about his background. I was told that in his family, he is the only one who is a Christian. He is the only one who is a Christian. When I heard this, I was extremely sad. I sat down and began to think about it. And the questions that, started flowing in my mind was, why would somebody like this lose his life through such a tragedy? He was a Christian among his family. He was supposed to be the light that would bring the light of the gospel to the rest of his family. He has struggled honestly to make it in life, yet his life has been cut short. I asked the question, why would this happen? Where was God when he was knocked down by the taxi? A lot of people will ask such questions. I mean, he's a Christian, he's supposed to be protected. Why would such a precious life be cut short? Such an innocent child who was struggling to make it in life. And watch movies, these Nigerian movies, Ghanaian movies, and we see people like this. In the movies, they always end up, beautiful. They always end up prosperous. They always end up, living a better life and being an example to those who are struggling. But for this, his life was cut short. The question is, why? How do you understand this? It is not easy when such tragedies hit very close to you. It is not easy when a child of God goes through things like this. As a pastor, I have, these people calling me, telling me, Pastor, I prayed and I'm not seeing anything. This young man was praying, definitely. From what I heard, he was actually from an all-night prayer coming back home as a student. He was knocked down. He wasn't sick. He was knocked down by a car and he died on the spot. All the struggles has been in vain. So I was thinking about it and I asked God, why would such a thing happen? Is it not going to shake the faith of other people? Then I was taken to the Bible. As I was thinking about it, God directed me to the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 11. And I said, but this is a common, chapter about faith. We know this already. What do we do with this? I mean, how is this going to solve the problem? How is this going to console the family? But God directed me to read deeper. And as I read the chapter of Hebrews chapter 11, I read the verses. Something struck me about the reality of the Christian faith that a lot of us have missed. We have missed it. So when such tragedies happen, we are shaken. Our faith is, shaken to the core. We begin to doubt even if God exists. Now, let me read for you Hebrews chapter 11. I know you are familiar with it. Hebrews chapter 11, it begins with verse 1 saying, "And now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." When we read texts like this, we are excited because when you keep reading, it talks about, by faith, Abel offered an excellent sacrifice. When you keep reading, say, by faith, Enoch was taken away. And it's so wonderful. By faith, the walls of Jericho came down. By faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish. By faith, wonderful things were done. And I get so charged in faith when I read what God had accomplished through other people because they had faith in Him. As I was reading this, I was asking myself, God, but why? This has nothing to do with what has happened. These are wonderful testimonies of faith. But a young man has lost his life who was struggling, a faithful young man who loved you. Among his family, he was the only one who professed faith in you. Yet his life has been cut short. Why? The Spirit of God told me to read further. And as I read Hebrews chapter 11, verses 34 onwards, it says, by faith they quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became violent in battle, turned into flight the armies of the enemies. And I was excited. I kept reading. Then when I got to verse 36, something changed. All of a sudden, it was no more about the kind of things we want to see in our lives. It changed from the things that we normally hear from the pulpit, from the kind of sweet sermons that we normally hear. God would work for you. Your breakthrough is coming. Oh, your faith would cause an increase, an overflow in your life. It turned from that to something that we don't expect to happen in our lives. Now let me read for you. Verse 36 of Hebrews chapter 11. I'm reading up to the very last verse. That is verse 40. It says, by faith still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, and were slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and in goatskins, and being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And in all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. Did you get that? Did you get that? By faith, some were stoned. Before you ask the question, where was God when this young man was knocked down by the car? Get to understand the reality of the faith you profess. Some were stoned. Some were sawn apart. Some were crucified. For what? For the faith, the same faith that you and I profess today. I'm not sharing this tragedy with you to weaken your faith or to cause you to doubt the power of God, but rather for you to understand the reality of the faith that we profess. If you claim to be a Christian, you must understand that it is a package. And so far as we live in this sin-forsaken world, understand that the promise is not here. I am not speaking against, living good. No, God wants us to enjoy. But you need to understand that the promise is not here. Because when you read verse 39 and 40 of Hebrews chapter 11, it says, all these having obtained a good testimony through faith. Despite all that they went through, they obtained a good testimony because of faith. They were stoned, they never gave up. They were sawn apart. Can you imagine somebody being sawn apart into two with sword? They never gave up. God said they obtained a good testimony, yet they did not receive the promise. But they never gave up. They never gave up. My dear friend, I am not really happy about this story. I mean, this young man's story has really made me sad. Especially the fact that he was a student who was brilliant. His roommates are testifying that he's one of the most brilliant students they've ever seen. And he had struggled. He was a Christian. He had returned from praying all night to God. I doubt that one of his prayer points was, God, help me to die quickly. It wasn't part of it. But he met what he was not expecting. God says, the faith that we profess in him means that if his son, who was all righteous, was persecuted, he says, you would also be persecuted. It says we will go through tribulations. In fact, Jesus Christ says that the road that we have taken, it is the narrow road. It is full of thorns. It is full of hardships. I want you to understand that to be a Christian is not about all the things, wonderful things that this world offers. To be a Christian means to stand no matter what, even when we do not understand. That is why our profession can only be strengthened not with what we know or what we have, but with faith in God. With faith in God. Because faith, if I put it in my own definition, is moving forward and following God even when it does not make sense. Even when the prayer you've been asking God or the things you've been asking God over the years has not been given to you. Even when you have been sidelined by the world, you still continue to serve him. That is called faith. Faith has nothing to do with receiving all the things you ask for. Remember what Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego said. We will never bow. We know our God will deliver us. That is faith. A lot of us, our faith stops there. But they continue to say, even if he does not deliver us, we will not bow. That is the faith I need in these last days. And that is the faith you need. The even if faith. Maybe you're also sad, but I pray that you'll be encouraged by this message. It's coming straight from my heart. And I know God is going to strengthen us. I know things will be well for us. I know the promise is sure because he who made the promise never lies. He says, I am going to prepare a place for you. Not in New York, not in London, not in Accra, not in Johannesburg, not in Kenya, but in the kingdom of God above. That, my dear friend, is the promise. It says, when I am done, I will come again and take you to be with me. On that day, this young man, would come back to life and meet the Lord in the skies. I want to console you if you're a family member of this man. Maybe you know who I'm talking about. From the University of Education, Winneba. Remember, God has the final say. And he always knows what he does. May God bless you and encourage you in these last days. Shalom.